The sun was bright that afternoon, but Margaret Chin didn't notice. She never noticed beautiful things anymore. She pushed 2 wheelchairs down the busy sidewalk, one in each hand. Inside them sat her twin boys, 7 years old, silent, and still, too still, the way they'd been for 3 years now. "Mom, can we get ice cream?" asked Marcus, the boy in the blue wheelchair. "Please," added Michael, his brother in the red one. Margaret forced a smile. "Of course, my loves." Her arms ached. Her heart ached more. She had millions of dollars, a mansion with 12 bedrooms, cars that cost more than most people's houses. She could buy her sons anything in the world, except the one thing they needed. Their legs didn't work. The doctors said they never would again. A rare disease, they called it. "We've tried everything," they said. "There's nothing more we can do," they whispered, avoiding her eyes. Margaret had flown her boys to 17 different countries. She'd paid the best doctors on earth. She'd begged. She'd cried. She'd screamed at God in empty hospital hallways. Nothing changed. Her boys would never run again, never play soccer, never dance at their weddings. She'd finally accepted it. She had to. Hope was too painful when it kept dying. "Mom, look." Michael pointed. "That girl is staring at us." Margaret looked up. A small black girl stood in the middle of the sidewalk. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Her clothes were too big, clearly donated. Her hair was pulled into 2 puffy ponytails. Her shoes had holes in them. But her eyes were bright and fierce, like she could see through walls, through people, through time itself. The girl walked straight toward them. People moved out of her way, though Margaret didn't know if they noticed they were doing it. "Excuse me," Margaret said, trying to step around her. "We need to—" "Adopt me," the girl said. Her voice was clear and strong. "Adopt me and I will cure your kids." Margaret froze. The words hung in the air like smoke, like magic, like a punch to the stomach. What did you just say?" The girl didn't blink. "Adopt me. I will make your sons walk again." Margaret felt something crack inside her chest. Was it anger? Was it hope? She couldn't tell anymore. They felt the same now. "That's not funny," Margaret whispered. Her hands trembled on the wheelchair handles. "That's cruel. You don't say things like that to—" "I'm not joking." The girl stepped closer. "I know what's wrong with them, and I know how to fix it. You're 5 years old." Margaret's voice rose. People were staring now. She didn't care. "You're a child. Do you have any idea what you're saying? Do you know what you're doing to me right now?" The doctors were wrong before. A tiny voice whispered in Margaret's mind. She crushed it immediately. Hope was poison. "Mom." Marcus tugged her sleeve. "Who is she? What does she mean? Cure us?" Michael asked. His voice was so small, so careful, like he was afraid to want anything. Margaret's heart shattered all over again. "She doesn't mean anything, baby. She's just—" Margaret looked at the girl, anger flashing in her eyes. "She doesn't understand what she's saying." "Yes, I do." The girl crossed her arms. "The doctors told you your sons will never walk. They said there's no hope. They said you should accept it." Margaret's blood ran cold. "How do you—" "But they're wrong," the girl continued. "Doctors don't know everything. They can be wrong. They are wrong about your boys." "Stop it." Margaret's voice cracked. "Stop it right now. I don't know who you are or what kind of sick game this is, but it's not a game." The girl's eyes softened. "I promise you, I can help them, but you have to adopt me first." "That's insane." Margaret wanted to scream, wanted to run, wanted to shake this strange little girl until she took back her terrible, beautiful, impossible words. "Why would I adopt a random child who walks up to me on the street making crazy promises?" "Because you want your sons to walk again," the girl said simply. "Because deep down you still hope, even though you pretend you don't." Margaret felt tears burning her eyes. "You don't know anything about me. I know everything about you." The girl's voice was gentle now. "I know you cry in the shower, so your boys won't hear. I know you still have their soccer cleats in the garage, Even though you tell yourself you'll donate them. I know you dream about them running, and then you wake up and hate yourself for dreaming. Margaret couldn't breathe. How did this child know these things? How did she see straight into Margaret's soul? Mom! Marcus's voice was shaking. Mom, is she telling the truth? Can she really? No. Margaret's voice was hard, protective. She wouldn't let anyone hurt her boys with false hope ever again. She can't. She's just a little girl. She doesn't have magic powers. I never said I had magic powers, the girl replied. I just said I could help. There's a difference. Then how? Margaret demanded. How could you possibly cure them when the best doctors in the world couldn't? The girl smiled. It was a sad, knowing smile. Too old for her young face. Because doctors treat bodies, she said. I treat something else. That doesn't make any sense. It will, the girl promised. Adopt me. If I'm lying, what do you lose? You'll have given a home to an orphan who needs one. That's not so bad, is it? Margaret stared at her. And if you're telling the truth, then you get everything back, the girl whispered. Everything you lost. Everything you stopped letting yourself dream about. The twins were quiet now, watching, waiting. Margaret saw something in their eyes she hadn't seen in months. Hope, small and fragile, like a candle in the wind. But there, this is crazy, Margaret breathed. Yes, the girl agreed. But what if I'm right? Those 5 words echoed in Margaret's head all the way home, through dinner, through baths and bedtime stories, and tucking the boys in. What if I'm right? That night, Margaret lay in her enormous bed, staring at the ceiling. She'd spent 3 years accepting the impossible, accepting that her sons would never walk, never run, never be whole again. Could she spend one moment accepting something else impossible? That a 5-year-old orphan girl with holes in her shoes might know something that 17 specialists didn't? It was insane. It was stupid. It was... Mom. A small voice came from her doorway. Marcus and Michael sat in their wheelchairs, side by side. They must have wheeled themselves from their room. What if she's telling the truth? Marcus whispered, what if we could really walk again? Michael added. Margaret looked at her sons. Her beautiful, brave, broken boys. She'd stopped hoping because hope hurt too much. But maybe hope was the only thing left to try. When the sun rose, Margaret got dressed in silence. She didn't tell the boys where she was going. She didn't tell herself either, really. But her car knew the way to the city orphanage. And when she walked through the doors, the little girl was waiting, sitting on a bench, smiling, like she'd known all along. I knew you'd come, the girl said softly. Margaret's hands shook as she approached the front desk. I'd like to inquire, she heard herself say, about adopting a child. The words felt like jumping off a cliff, like flying, like falling, maybe all 3 at once. The paperwork took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of background checks and home visits and questions. So many questions. Why do you want to adopt? Do you have experience with children? Can you provide a stable home? Margaret answered them all. She had the perfect house, the perfect bank account, the perfect references. What she didn't tell them was the real reason, that a 5-year-old girl had promised her a miracle. They'd think she was crazy. Maybe she was. The boys asked about the girl every single day. When is she coming, Mom? Did you find her? Will she really live with us? Margaret didn't know how to answer. Part of her still wanted to protect them from disappointment, from hope. But another part of her, a part that was growing stronger, whispered, what if? Finally, on a gray Tuesday morning, Margaret's phone rang. Miss Chen, the adoption has been approved. You can pick up your daughter today. Your daughter. The words made Margaret's heart skip. She drove to the orphanage with the twins in the back seat. They were quiet, but she could feel their excitement like electricity in the air. The girl was waiting in the lobby. She wore the same clothes from 3 weeks ago, the same shoes with holes. But when she saw them, her face lit up like the sun. Hi, she said simply. Hi, Margaret replied. Her voice felt stuck in her throat. We're here to take you home. I know. The girl picked up a small backpack. It looked almost empty. I'm ready. The social worker smiled. This is wonderful. I'm sure you'll all be very happy together. She bent down to the girl's level. What do you say to your new family? The girl looked at Marcus and Michael, then at Margaret. Thank you for believing in me, she said quietly. Margaret's eyes stung with tears. On the drive home, Marcus broke the silence. What's your name? Grace, the girl answered. I'm Marcus. That's Michael. I know, Grace said. You're the boy who loves chocolate ice cream. And Michael likes vanilla. The twins looked at each other, amazed. How did you? I pay attention, Grace said with a small smile. When they arrived at the mansion, Grace didn't gasp like most people did. She just looked at it thoughtfully. Big house, she observed. Lots of rooms to feel lonely in. Margaret felt that crack in her chest again. This child saw everything. The first week was strange. Grace settled into her new room, painted lavender, filled with toys and books that Margaret had bought. But Grace didn't play with the toys much. Instead, she spent her time with the twins. She sat with them for hours, talking, listening, playing board games. Margaret watched from doorways, wondering, waiting. When would the miracle happen? But nothing changed. The boys still couldn't walk. Their legs still didn't move. By the second week, Margaret's doubt grew heavy. She'd been a fool. She let a child's impossible promise break down her defenses. She'd adopted a girl because of a fantasy, not because she genuinely wanted to help an orphan. What had she done? One night, she found Grace sitting in the hallway outside the boys' room. Why are you out here? Margaret asked. Listening. Grace said, They're having bad dreams. Margaret's heart sank. They have them a lot, ever since they got sick. Grace looked up at her with those knowing eyes. You have them too. It wasn't a question. Margaret sat down beside her. Grace, about what you said, about curing the boys. Yes. When is it going to happen? Grace tilted her head. It already started. What? But they still can't. Walking isn't just about legs, Ms. Margaret, Grace said softly. It's about believing you can. Your boys forgot how to believe. That doesn't make medical sense. Medicine isn't everything. Grace stood up. May I try something? Margaret hesitated, then nodded. Grace wheeled herself into Boy's room. She'd learned to use Michael's spare wheelchair. Margaret followed. The twins were awake, tangled in their blankets. Bad dreams. Grace asked. They nodded. Want to hear a story? Yes, they whispered together. Grace smiled. Once, there were two princes who lived in a tall castle. Everyone said they'd never be able to climb to the top. The stairs were too many, too steep, impossible. Like us, Marcus said quietly. Like you, Grace agreed. But the princes had a secret weapon. What? Michael asked. They had each other, and they had something even more powerful. What? They believed they could do it. Not all at once, not in one day, but one step at a time. Grace reached out and touched Marcus's leg. Can you feel this? Marcus concentrated. I don't know. Maybe. Try harder. Not with your leg. With your mind. Tell your leg you believe in it. That's silly, Marcus said. But he closed his eyes anyway. Margaret held her breath. I feel something, Marcus whispered. It's tiny, like a tingle. That's your leg waking up, Grace said. It's been asleep for a long time. Be patient with it. Michael, your turn. Grace moved his bedside. Michael closed his eyes too. Concentrated. 1 minute passed. 2. Then his eyes flew open. My toe just moved. Mom, did you see? Margaret rushed over. Do it again. Michael scrunched up his face. His big toe twitched. Just barely. Just enough. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. Impossible, she breathed. No, Grace said firmly. Possible. Just very, very hard. That night, Margaret couldn't sleep. She replayed the moment over and over. It was so small. Just a toe twitch. Maybe it was a muscle spasm. Maybe it meant nothing. But maybe. The next morning, she called Dr. Harrison, the boy's main specialist. I need you to examine them again, she said. Ms. Chun, we've been over this. Please, Margaret interrupted. Something's changed. Dr. Harrison arrived that afternoon, skepticism written all over his face, until he saw Michael move his toe. Then Marcus. The doctor's expression shifted from doubt to confusion to shock. That's not possible, he muttered, checking his charts. The nerve damage was too severe. They shouldn't be able to. But they can, Margaret said firmly. Dr. Harrison looked at Grace, who sat quietly in the corner. Has anything changed in their treatment? No, Margaret said. We've been believing harder. The doctor frowned but said nothing. He ran more tests, asked more questions. Finally, he admitted, there's some neural activity where there wasn't before. I can't explain it, but if this continues... He paused. We might want to try physical therapy again. After he left, Margaret found Grace in the garden. You're really doing it, Margaret whispered. You're keeping your promise. Grace looked up at her. I'm not doing anything, Ms. Margaret. Your boys are. I'm just reminding them they can. But how? How is this possible? Grace smiled that too old smile. The body listens to the heart, and the heart listens to hope. Your boys forgot how to hope. I'm teaching them again. Margaret knelt down beside her. Who are you, Grace? Really? Grace's smile faded. I'm just a girl who learned that believing is stronger than anyone thinks. I learned it the hard way. What do you mean? But Grace just shook her head. That's a story for another day. Right now we have work to do. That evening, Grace gathered the whole family in the living room. Tomorrow, she announced, we're going to try something big. What? The twins asked eagerly. Grace's eyes sparkled with determination. Tomorrow, we're going to help you stand. Morning came too slowly and too fast. Margaret barely slept. She kept thinking about Grace's words. Tomorrow, we're going to help you stand. It was impossible. The boys hadn't stood in 3 years. Their legs were weak. The muscles had withered. But then again, moving their toes had been impossible too. When Margaret came downstairs, Grace was already in the living room, pushing furniture against the walls. What are you doing? Margaret asked. Making space, Grace said simply. We'll need room. The twins wheeled in, their eyes bright with nervous excitement. Are we really going to try? Marcus asked, Are you scared? Grace replied. Both boys nodded. Good, Grace said. Being scared means you care. It means this matters. She positioned both wheelchairs in the center of the room, side by side. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Ms. Margaret, stand in front of Marcus. I'll stand in front of Michael. You mean you'll kneel? Margaret asked. No, Grace said. I mean I'll stand. And then, before Margaret could process what was happening, Grace stood up from her own wheelchair. Margaret gasped. You can walk? This whole time. Grace nodded slowly. I never said I couldn't. I just let you assume. But why? Because if I'd walked in that first day, you wouldn't have understood, Grace said. You needed to see that wheelchairs don't define who we are, that being broken is just a story we tell ourselves. Margaret's mind was spinning. I don't understand. You will. Grace turned to the boys. Marcus, Michael, look at me. They did. I'm going to tell you something true, Grace said. Your legs work. They always have. Your body forgot, but your legs remember. We just have to remind them. The doctor said, Marcus started. The doctors see bodies, Grace interrupted. But you are more than your body. You are your hope, your courage, your love for each other. And that can move mountains. It can definitely move legs. She held out her hands to Michael. Trust me? Michael looked at his mother. Margaret's heart was pounding, but she nodded. Michael gripped Grace's hands. Now, Grace said softly, I'm not going to pull you up. You're going to push yourself up. I'm just here to catch you if you fall. I can't. You can. You've been moving your toes for weeks now. You've been working those muscles in bed when you think no one's watching. Your legs are stronger than you think. Michael took a shaky breath. Okay, I'll try. He placed his hands on the armrests of his wheelchair. Pushed. Nothing happened. He pushed harder. His face turned red with effort. Margaret wanted to tell him to stop, to not hurt himself, to... Michael's body rose 6 inches off the seat. Then he collapsed back down, panting. I did it, he gasped. Did you see? I lifted myself. You did, Grace said, her smile huge. Rest for a moment. Then we try again. Marcus was already gripping the armrests of his own wheelchair. My turn, he said. Margaret rushed over to stand in front of him, like Grace was doing for Michael. I'm here, baby, she whispered. I've got you. Marcus pushed. His arms trembled, his face scrunched with concentration. And then, impossibly miraculously, he rose. Not all the way to standing, but his bottom lifted off the seat. His legs, his weak, supposedly useless legs, were supporting some of his weight. Mom, he cried. Mom, I'm doing it. Tears streamed down Margaret's face. You're doing it. For the next hour, both boys practiced. Lifting, sitting, lifting again. Each time, they got a little higher, a little stronger. Finally, Grace said, Okay, now we try standing all the way. I don't know if I can, Michael admitted. You can't do it alone, Grace agreed. That's why you have us. She positioned herself next to Michael. Margaret stood next to Marcus. On 3, Grace said. You push. We guide. We don't lift you. You lift yourself. Ready? The boys nodded. 1. Margaret's heart hammered against her ribs. 2. This was impossible. This was insane. This was... 3. Marcus pushed with everything he had. Margaret's hand supported him, steadied him, but she didn't pull. He rose. Inch by inch, his body straightened. His legs shook violently. They looked like they might give out at any second, but they held. Marcus was standing. Michael. Grace's voice rang out. Margaret turned. Michael was standing too, clinging to Grace's arms, his legs trembling like leaves of a storm, but standing. Both boys were standing. I'm standing, Marcus whispered, like he couldn't believe his own words. Mom, I'm standing. I see you, baby, Margaret sobbed. I see you. Now, Grace said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. Now we try something even harder. What could be harder than this? Michael asked. Grace smiled. Walking. That's impossible, Marcus breathed. So is standing, Grace pointed out. And look at you now. She adjusted her grip on Michael's arm. Margaret did the same with Marcus. We're going to take 1 step, Grace said. Just 1. That's all. Your left foot, Michael. Marcus, your right foot. Just slide it forward 6 inches. Ready? I'm scared, Michael admitted. Me too, Marcus added. Being scared is okay, Grace said. Letting fear stop you, that's the only real problem. Now, on 3 again. 1, 2, 3. Marcus lifted his right foot. It trembled in the air for a breathless moment. Then it moved forward, 6 inches. When it touched the ground again, Marcus screamed, not in pain, but in pure joy. I walked. I took a step. I walked. Michael was crying as he did the same. His left foot slid forward. Touchdown. 1 step. The first step in 3 years. Margaret collapsed to her knees, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. Her boys, her precious boys, they were walking. Over the next 2 weeks, the twins grew stronger every day. 1 step became 2. 2 became 5. 5 became 10. Dr. Harrison came to house twice a week, his medical journals growing useless in his hands. This defies everything I know, he kept saying. This should not be possible. But it was. 1 month after Grace came to live with them, Marcus and Michael walked from their bedroom to the kitchen without any help. Margaret watched them through tears she'd stopped trying to hide. That night, after the boys were asleep, Margaret found Grace on the back porch, staring at the stars. I need to know, Margaret said softly. How did you know you could help them? Grace was quiet for a long moment. My brother couldn't walk either, she finally said. He had the same disease as your boys. The doctors said the same things. What happened to him? He gave up, Grace whispered. He stopped believing he could ever walk again. And when you stop believing, sometimes your body listens. He died 2 years ago. Margaret's heart broke. Grace, I'm so sorry. I learned something from losing him, Grace continued. I learned that doctors know medicine, but they don't know hope. They don't know that sometimes the mind can heal what medicine can't. That believing you can do something is the first step to actually doing it. Is that why you learned to walk? Grace nodded. I had the disease too, but I refused to accept it. Every single day, I told my legs they could work. I believed it so hard that eventually my body had no choice but to listen. You healed yourself, Margaret breathed. I reminded myself I was already whole, Grace corrected. There's a difference. Margaret pulled Grace into a hug. You gave me my sons back. No, Grace said softly. I gave them back to themselves. And maybe, she hesitated, maybe you gave me a family back. You're not maybe our family, Margaret said fiercely. You are our family. Forever. 6 months later, Marcus and Michael ran in their first race at school. They didn't win. They came in 7th and 9th place. It was the most beautiful thing Margaret had ever seen. She stood at the finish line with Grace beside her, both of them cheering so loudly they were almost screaming. When the boys crossed the finish line, they collapsed in a heap, laughing and exhausted and perfectly, wonderfully whole. That night, Margaret tucked all 3 of her children into bed. Mom, Marcus said sleepily, I'm glad you found Grace. I'm glad Grace found us, Margaret corrected. Do you think other kids could learn what we learned? Michael asked. Grace smiled from her bed across the room. I think everyone already knows it. They just forget sometimes. They forget that believing is powerful, that hope is real, that miracles don't always come from doctors or medicine. Where do they come from? Marcus asked. From each other, Grace said simply. From love, from not giving up. Margaret kissed each of her children goodnight. As she turned off the light, she paused in the doorway. Grace, she said softly. Yes. Thank you for being impossible. Grace's laugh was soft in the darkness. Thank you for believing in impossible things. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that miracles aren't always where we expect them. Sometimes they come from the smallest, bravest voices. Sometimes they come from hope we'd forgotten we had. Like and subscribe to hear more stories about courage, faith, and the power of never giving up, because the world needs more people who believe in impossible things. What miracle are you believing for today? Share in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else to keep hoping, keep trying, keep believing. Remember, the only impossible miracles are the ones we stop believing in.